What I have today is a 3T Racemax Italia 2. And there is nothing about this bike that is what you'd call normal. Everything about it is, I don't know if it's special or if it's weird, but we're gonna talk about all those details. Before we get into that though, let's start with a ride. Right now I'm headed across the city on what I would call the premier Aero race gravel bike. Now if you think that sounds weird, it's fitting because pretty much everything about this 3T bike is weird. But what I'm gonna find out, what I set to find out, is if it's good weird or bad weird. Let's see how it goes. I don't really mind riding across the city when I'm starting a gravel bike review because I think you can tell a lot about a good gravel bike, how it does on pavement. That's one of the things that sets a gravel bike apart from a mountain bike. So, does it do well? And then what I'm noticing right away on this bike is I'm running 45 Schwab tires on the Zip wheels, and my God, this is a stiff frame. I'm at 27 PSI, just like Zip recommends. That's normally totally fine on a 45. I feel like I need to drop it on this bike. Just at the top of some hill, I'm lost in the West Hills, not quite at Forest Park yet, and my bottle cage was rattling. Well, I heard some rattling. I stopped. Turns out that there's an extra little lock thing on the down tube storage, which I find to be a little bit of a pain, although I'd probably figure it out. For what it's worth, there's also very little room in there. I can't get a jacket, which is sort of my gold standard. Aha! Back on track. I know where I am. Made it to Forest Park. Just had a very laughable moment. I thought maybe I would go up this really steep little trail just because that'll be fun to show, but there was no way. This bike is running a 40 with a 10 to 46 in the rear, and there's no way I could make it up that path with this gearing. And I'm also not totally sure that I don't have toe overlap on this frame. Yeah, I was right to worry about toe overlap. My toe definitely touches on this bike. I gotta be careful on tight corners. Just came up a different trail. This one's not as steep or as tight and windy, but it's still a single track trail. So I just wanted to see, how did this bike do? Like on a really steep hill, how's the balance of it? And I'm also really curious to see how it does on the descent. We'll see. So far, on the way up, I was a fan. It worked just fine. I mean, you know, it's a race bike. This is not what it's meant for, but it does okay. Hey, I'm back going fast, and this is a lot more fun. One thing that I was worried about earlier was the stiffness of this frame. And it does feel stiff. I feel like I could drop the tire pressure a bit, but I will say that it's actually floating pretty well across this road, and I don't feel like it's like bothering me, the stiffness of it. And it's very responsive, so that's sort of fun. What I'm really loving are these handlebars. And I've known about them for a few years. They're a very cool handlebar if you want to build an Aero gravel bike. Except, there's not really a bike they make sense on. I guess unless it's a 3T. So here we are. It's an Aero gravel handlebar. It's got crazy bladed tops, but I'm running a 38, so it's super comfortable on the hoods. And then what I'm really loving about them is if you go to the drops, there's a wide flare and it's quite short. It really shortens up the reach. So you have a lot of control and you could sit there for, 100 miles in Iowa wind or something. I'm loving this handlebar. As usual on first rides, I'm being quite positive during this ride, and that is because I'm in an absolutely beautiful spot, riding an amazing bike. It's hard to be negative. But there is one thing that I often complain about, which is when an expensive bike doesn't have a power meter. And that is the case here. I am using the new Garmin pedals that are rechargeable. They're fantastic. More to come on those later. But I had to do that because there's no power meter. Except I'm not gonna hold that one against this bike because, as I said in the beginning, this bike is weird. And one of the things about it that's kind of weird is that you can get it with this 3T carbon crank, which is like a work of art. There's no power meter, but my God, it is beautiful. Not only that, but it's Aero. I'm at the end of Forest Park, and I think if I'm summing things up, I see this bike a lot as a big sugar bike, which I think is kind of the point. There's probably some Euro race that I could call it instead, but if I'm putting it in terms of that I've been to, big sugar, where it's pretty flat, it's very fast, be a perfect bike for that. I'm gonna descend on a fast road. I don't expect this is gonna be a problem at all. Big tire bikes normally handle this just fine, but if there is a problem, you'll hear about it after this. As expected, there were no surprises on that descent. There are some surprises in the geometry though. This is a gravel race bike, and to me, that would mean I would expect it to be long and low. Maybe not as long and low as a road bike, but still long and low. But when you compare it to a bike like the Envy Mog, and I think that the 3T and the Mog are very similar in many ways, you'll find that the 3T has much less reach, and it also has more stack. The effect is that it can feel a little cramped in an aero position, but it feels really easy to knock out big miles on. A big part of that is the handlebar that you heard me praise on the ride. The design keeps the controls vertical, but it flares almost 8 centimeters when you move to the drops on a 40 centimeter bar. Even more unique is all the extra reach on the drop. So if you want, you can really shorten your reach. Unfortunately, the bar is not a one-piece design and the stem is separate. Many of you probably think that's a positive thing, except this is a weird one. The cables still route internally and they still go through the headset bearings. Plus, since it's Aero, the faceplate bolts are backwards and there's a very odd system that shields the steer tube inside the stem. If a brand is gonna go with a two-piece bar and stem for usability, this is the absolute worst way to do it. And a one-piece system would actually be more usable. 3T does keep the cables externally routed under the stem. They're quite hidden, but the stated reason for that is to make it easier to travel with. It seems like a good idea, except that the way this is all designed, I don't think you could actually fold it down and fit it in a case the way that it's meant to. Now, thankfully, there's no weirdness with the steer tube. It's just a regular round one, and in theory, you can swap this bar and stem. Except that, as always, it's a little unclear exactly what would work and what would look like it's meant to be there, even if you get it to fit. But that all aside, even if you were to solve all of that, this bar and stem are included in the $6,500 frame set price. And that also includes the seat post. And the seat post is weird also. It's narrow and proprietary, but that part's expected. What's extra weird is that there's a light in it. Now, on a lot of bikes, an integrated light in the seat post would be a very cool thing. But it seems really weird to me on an Aero gravel race bike. Still, 3T does include a blank in case you want to go bike packing and you have a bag back there, or just for any reason you want to swap out the light. All that complaining aside, there's actually not a whole lot to really complain about. My bike uses SRAM Force Access and zip wheels, and its ready to ride weight is 8.25 kilograms. Now, as I said, my bike has zip wheels, and that's only because the 3T wheels that would normally come with this build aren't quite ready yet. In the future, what you'll get is a hookless 3T wheel that's 45 millimeter deep, 40 millimeter external, and a 29 millimeter internal width. Those wheels weigh less than the zip wheels at 1,435 grams. However, having not tried those wheels, I'd still opt for the zip wheels, which are more Aero. What I wouldn't trade away though is the Torno crank. This thing is a 459 gram, made in Italy piece of carbon jewelry. It is gorgeous. It's also truly Aero. Now, 3T didn't give any details on this, but it's a molded arm-to-spider design, and I have it on good authority that you can save 2 to 3 watts with a design like this. There are also weird little other Aero tricks. The obvious ones, of course, are the massive down tube and head tube, both designed to make big tires Aero. Keep looking though, and you'll find a little fairing on the brake caliper bolts, and the axle isn't visible on the receiving end of the fork. Thankfully, this is not a completely unusable Aero bike. There's room for 50 millimeter tires, or 51 millimeter width as measured, if you will. There's also 3 bottle mounts, one on the outside of the down tube. There's a bento box mount on the top tube, and there's the in-frame storage that I complained about earlier. What this all adds up to is a bike that you might call an all-road bike, except that it really means all-road in this case, like any road. Fast pavement, but also really rutted and rough. Still a road though. This is not a single track machine. Now personally, I feel like the reach is a little shorter than I might like. I really don't like the stem, and I don't like the way that the in-frame storage is designed. I still absolutely love this bike. I love that it's made in Italy. I love that it's aero focused. And above all, I just love the fast, snappy ride feel. Not everyone's gonna love this bike, but there is a group of people who want a fast gravel bike that's really for racing. And if that's you, you will love this one.